Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. Do you think it's possible to change God's mind? I'm in Numbers 23 through 26 today, and this is, I think it's a tricky theological crux of how we practice our faith and how we interact with God. And I want to touch on what's happening here in this passage, but going back to Moses, I think about something that stood out as we were reading through all of the passages where he was mad at Israel and he kept offering, hey, I'll just give you the birthright and I'll destroy all of Israel. I'll cancel that covenant and I'll give it to you, and you can procreate and bring forth all of the people on the earth and carry that covenant. And Moses says, no, God, actually, I don't think that would be a good thing. I think it'd be bad for your image. And I think we can look at that as this argument that Moses has an ability to influence God. And that's sort of a dangerous idea, because I don't want a God that I can influence. I remember growing up, I have the ability to argue really persuasively. And that made me feel like sometimes I was able to lay out a case that was intelligent enough and supported enough and get my way. And that terrified me more than my parents just saying no to me. And I appreciate that my parents listened to me and were willing to change their minds on things when I had presented a really good argument. And I think that's sort of the case of what Moses is doing. But in a God that holds all of creation and that understands the beginning and the end, the idea that I could pray and change God's mind about the direction of my life is terrifying. I think that I don't believe that is the character of God, so I'll just spit that out. I believe that God is constant. I believe that He already knows the direction of your life. He already knows where He wants to take you, to give you the very best of everything. I believe that we can pray. We can pray and ask for things. God wants us to ask for things, but we don't have the ability to influence, and that's because we can't see. We can't see all the way down the road and around the corner, and we don't understand sometimes the things that we really want God to do for us or in our lives or in somebody else's life might actually create a problem. It might create an evil. And so I want God to be unchangeable. And I think with Moses, I don't believe he was actually changing the direction. I think that God was offering him a path that was possible. He wasn't changing his mind. He was staying constant, but he was offering a different direction to Moses. And Moses wasn't able to tell God to do something else, but he was able to accept that direction or deny that direction because we have free will. It's a fine distinction. But our free will allows us to pick up what God's direction is, but it doesn't allow us to change His mind. So back to Numbers, we have Balak, who is the king of the Moabites, And he has gone in with the Midianites, and the Midianites are actually relatives. They are descendants of Abraham as well as Israel is, but they were later. They weren't descendants of the correct line underneath Abraham. And so they are relatives, but they have gone against the Israelites here. They are doing a lot of bad stuff. They are worshiping Baal. And the worship of Baal at this time was a lot of really kinky sexual stuff. It was sexual iniquity. It was sleeping around and adultery, and just not what Israel has been directed here. That is part of the worship of Baal. So Balak has hired Balaam, our figure on the speaking donkey, to come, and he wants him to curse Israel. And Balaam is that figure where he has God's ear. He understands the proper ways to get God's attention. So he understands all of the practices, all of the sacrifices, all of the correct behavior in front of God, but he doesn't truly have a heart for God. So he is up here. Balak takes him to the high places where people usually worship Baal, and actually here near the Baal altars, Balaam tells Balak to build him 7 altars, get him 7 bulls and 7 rams, and at each altar, then each of the 7 altars, he sacrifices 1 bull and 1 ram, and then he asks God if he's allowed to curse Israel. And of course, God has already told him before he left home that he's not going to be allowed to curse Israel, but he will be required to speak what God tells him to speak. So he actually spits out what comes through him when he asks for God's words. He goes back and opens his mouth and speaks over Israel in front of Balak, and it's a blessing for Israel. And Balak is like, that's not what I hired you to do. You just blessed them. I'm looking for a curse. Can we try for a curse? And so Balaam says, oh, okay, fine. Let's move to another mountain. And they do this multiple times, multiple mountains, and every time he does this, every time he tries it in another place, he gets the same answer. He opens his mouth and he speaks a blessing over Israel. And in the end, Balak refuses to pay, and Balaam foretells, actually then opens his mouth and does this big long prophecy over Israel and foretells of Jesus coming and of the king's doom. And this is not what Balak was looking for at all. And I think that it's telling here in my thinking, in combining it with what I was pondering about Moses and God, that here we have somebody else. Now, Balaam is not a good guy. He's not somebody who God is talking to personally like Moses. He's a prophet. So God is visiting Balaam in a dream or in a vision and giving him information and instruction. And Balaam is trying to profit off of that. So he's a useful idiot, really, for God. He is allowing him to live only because he is, there's a plan for Balaam. Even in his evil, there's a plan for this interaction with Balak. And I think there's a plan here to further entrench in our understanding that no matter if we go to church and we wear the right clothes and we put the amount of tithe that our church dogma says we're supposed to in the the plate when it's passed on Sunday, and we don't say bad words, and we follow all the rules, and we're a quote unquote good person, we still can't change God's mind. We don't have control over God even when we do everything right to get his attention. We need to be coming to God in a humbleness, and we need to be approaching him with our requests of understanding who he is. So when we approach God with our requests and they're granted, it's usually because we're seeking him with our whole heart, mind, soul, body, strength. When we give all of that over to God, we are in his lane. We are in his stream of consciousness. And the things that we ask for, we are asking actually with a heart for God. So we don't wind up asking for things that aren't going to be in his will, because we are operating in God's space. When we are just asking for ourselves, that's when we're trying to change God's mind. It doesn't work out. You're not going to change God's mind. And the prayers that go up, he's going to answer. You've heard people say sometimes God says no. Sometimes he says no, and he answers with what the right plan is for you. And it feels like it's gone in a different direction, or you've been denied, but you can't truly ask of God for something that isn't in his heart to begin with, in his plan. I think I'm muddling things a little bit here, but that's what happens when I start to wander in my thinking while my mouth is flapping around. We have to be careful about how we approach God here. We can't just do all the right things and expect things to change. And the other part of the reading from today, I'm going to explore, I think, a little bit tomorrow. I pray that God is blessing you today, and that he is drawing you to him, drawing you to read more, to dig, to look for answers, and to seek him. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.